You are watching What's Up Punta Cana with Christy Maggio, una americana italiana en la República Dominicana since 2013. A teacher at heart, but her curiosity has sparked new opportunities. Director, businesswoman, humanitarian, talk show host. La curiosa directora has decided to become the student. Go behind the scenes to get a closer look at what this country is all about. And Cher is here with you. So, if you love everything Dominicana, stay tuned. This is What's Up Punta Cana with Christy Maggio.
On today's episode of What's Up Punta Cana, I am thrilled to present Sabrina Bensalmi. Sabrina was listed number 2 on the list of top 50 most inspirational Black women in the UK in 2019. She is a multiple award-winning author of 2 books called #Homeschooling and Lone Parenthood. She's a podcast host on Life According to Sabrina, and Sabrina is also a multiple award-winning business and personal development consultant, a public speaker, as well as she has a great many other accomplishments attributed to her name. However, there is one accomplishment that she has which is above and beyond everything else, if you can believe it. Sabrina is a mother to 5 multiple award-winning entrepreneurial children who are also multiple award-winning authors who have their own brands, publishing houses, and signature programs. It's just incredible. The ages of her children range from 6 to 20, and the whole family was credited in the new movie How Thoughts Become Things, and her story is one that will make you truly rethink a great many things about parenting, children, and the educational system. So, we are going to jump right into the first question and get started with the incredible Sabrina Bensalmi. How are you able to, in all 5 of your children, instill that desire for them to be motivated to make a change, to do something to make them better and make them active at such a young age?
I think that's an excellent question. And I guess the short answer is child's play. Like when we don't think of it like that, like it's like sitting a child down and saying like, hey, we're going to have a board meeting and, we're going to change the world. The child's going to look at you and go, I think she's mad. So it's really about tapping into where are they? What do they enjoy doing? And those are the key aspects. First and foremost, I think as parents, we can get in their way. And what I mean by that, I like there's a thin line, and I guess culturally, sometimes there's quite a thick thin line that people talk about boundaries and respect. And I think that when parents develop a bond with their child and they have an ability to respect the child as an individual and teach the child vice versa, give love. So it's not like, hey, you're a child, you listen to me. And it's really about like, what have you come here to do? Like what really tapping in, like sitting down, having regular family meetings, checking in. Don't say, well, I'm the best parent in the world. I take my kids here. And, every time I come home, I do this airplane with my child. And then you turn around and say to the child, do you like airplanes? No. Well, you're happy every time I do it. Well, it seems like you're enjoying it, Mum. Because kids will give. If you remember when you're a child, we want our parents to be proud of us, and we want to try and heal or fix our parents. So we need to release them from that bondage of needing to pay us back. Because a lot of children, I don't know if you've come across this, but it's quite interesting from my perspective, the amount of guilt that children carry right up to adulthood. Like my parents did so much for me, and I need to give them this, or they somewhat lived their life in a paying back. So some of the things I did was just release them. Just say like, you don't have to do this for me. Mummy's okay. You don't have to stay with me forever. You can go travel the world. So I'm talking about lots of things that happened over a long period of time. I think that's the missing aspect. People sort of feel like they can learn everything in an hour. That takes 20 years. So again, just give yourself time. And when you don't have these massive pressures, to be honest, I feel that's the beauty, because the secret to what my family and I do is that we don't watch competition. Business is all about competition. What's going over here? How could you be better than them? And we have never done that. And I think that's why my kids enjoy what they do so much, because it's not about being a competitor to their peer. It's not about being the next best thing. It's not like, how can I wow you? It's actually, what brings you joy? Where's the happiness? Where's the bliss? Because that's that sacred part of us, that sacred unseen part of us that creates life, that creates worlds. And I think that when us adults allow our inner child to tap into that, and when we allow our children to tap into that, you excite yourself. Like, people come up to me and go, oh my God, wow. And I'm like, yeah, right, it's so crazy. And they're looking at me thinking, why am I as excited as them? Because I've also surrendered. You're an artist. And when we look at artists, an artist doesn't say, oh, do you like this? They do one stroke and say, do you like that? And they do another stroke and they say, they don't. They actually immerse themselves into this creative aspect of life, and they create these wondrous masterpieces. But they create it because they're not worrying about, okay, there's a competitor's painted, I've got to do better. And the more we can allow and inspire and encourage our children to lose their self in their creativity, they will create the most wondrous, picturesque things in the world. It really will.
That's incredible. Now, how do you find that your methodology and, letting them explore and be who they are and develop those skills that enhances their joy and brings out their inner love for life? How do you find that compares with schooling?
Well, schooling didn't work for us because of our personality. I struggled at school. I've always homeschooled since birth.
Oh, okay.
So it's interesting. So this is like my message to parents, is that there's this separation. Like, my children go to school or they homeschool. So they literally take them to school and they go, okay, brilliant, everything's going to happen at school. I'll help them with their homework, and that's it. I don't believe in that. Like, so I struggled at school, like personality wise. I've always been a dreamer, and my teacher would constantly say, get your head out the clouds, stop dreaming. And I just always felt disconnected at school. Just the environment, everything felt wrong. I don't know if you understand what I mean. Everything just felt wrong, like the relationships and kids being manipulative. And I thought, that's not really kids. So there's something that happens in an environment of school that sort of brings out a different side to children. Now, fast forward to me becoming a mother, I saw the same things play out in my children. I was very concerned about a few things. Now, I'm an only child, so a lot of it was like, oh, maybe it's just me, maybe I'm just, I need to learn. So when you're experiencing things for the first time, I've never had that kind of sibling interaction. I didn't grow up with family, so I grew up quite isolated. So I just thought, okay, maybe I'm just overreacting. Let's just feel it out. So it was child number 2 went through. There was bullying. There was all these strange behaviors. I'm going, something's not right. I had to do like coaching sessions and like healing sessions. And it felt somewhat like I was sending my child to school and defragging them and detoxing them as they came out. And I thought, that can't be right. Surely, when I went to school, the nice thing, I could at least cuddle my teacher, because there was like different, more right. Secondary school, I had more, a bit there, where primary school was nicer. But teachers were, it was a community feel. You run in the morning, give your teacher a hug, and she would hug you. And then you have kids nowadays, and teachers have all these restrictions. They're not allowed to touch. They're not allowed to be in a room with a child. So there's a lot of disconnect going on. But the bullying was just like off the scale. And I was shocked. I'm thinking, well, bullying is more isolated. It's not so much a conflict resolution. It definitely doesn't happen all day, every day. Right. So my children were coming back. They had been bitten on their back. And one of my sons, Paolo, who you mentioned, he had been bitten on his back. I mean, teeth marks. And I was just mortified, thinking, this child has bitten you. Like, that's insane. So I was trying to work out what would make a child so angry. Biting you is like one thing, which I just think is not right. But to leave teeth marks, you know, this was at the end of the day.
Right.
And I thought that was insane, on his back. So this child had jumped on his back and just sunk her teeth.
Because it's not necessarily an easy place to sink your teeth into.
Exactly. And he wasn't, you know, undressed, you know, he was in school. So I was thinking, like, this went through clothing. So I was just like out of my mind, going to teachers, explain, my child has teeth marks in his back. That's just outrageous. Oh, you know, sorry, she's got some issues. And I'm just thinking, what's going on in schools that's making kids so angry and raging? And my child, he's always been quite stocky, he's quite strong. So we had this thing, like, you don't hit people. So he just stood there and let her bite him. And this was going on, and they've all had these different experiences. Yasmin was pinned to a fence with two boys, one boy holding each arm while two punched her in her stomach. And saying, yeah, exactly. And the teacher like ran out to me at the end of the day when I was picking her up, and she said, if I hadn't seen it myself, I wouldn't believe it. But again, you know, kids are getting desensitized with all these violent games they're exposed to, the movies. We used to have Watershed. We don't have that anymore. So I just thought, kids don't do these things. This is primary school. This is not normal for kids to be so aggressive and, you know, just insane. So what I found is that for our family, because it had just been like 20 years, well, my daughter's 20 now. So I guess primary school, 15 years of just absolute hell in school. Like, it has, like, leaving school was just a refresh for us. Now, again, it depends what area you're in. It depends what type of school you go to. And if you're lucky enough to find a good school, I'm really happy for you. But I think parents just have to decide what works for them as a family. Homeschooling is not for everyone. It fits perfectly into our lifestyle. But going back to what I was saying, I think that every parent has the responsibility between them and their village, their community, their family, to homeschool the child. We can't just leave it to schools. Why? They have their agenda. And quite frankly, when we send a child to school, we're sending them into a training camp. And that training camp has one objective, and that's to train that child to become a worker bee, to operate controls, to do basic techniques and perform well. And at the end of the month, or whenever you have your appraisal, you get a pat on the back and get woo. But I always say to my kids, what if salary is the compensation that you are paid in order to give up on your dreams? Because I think there's something quite wrong there. I think if a child has big dreams, why not allow them to set up their own establishment? Why just teach them that they have to work for someone else? Don't get me wrong, if that's what they desire to do, let that happen. But at least let them have options.
Right. And I definitely agree with that. And it's interesting because an interview that I did with Greg Reed a couple of weeks ago, he did this whole ship and that whole thing about, you know, you make money as a child to do chores and all of that stuff. And then when he's like, this person's sitting there telling me, you're teaching your child that the only way to earn money is in doing something that they don't like. Even I was like, you know, never was I conscious of that until that moment, you know? And then one of the things for me that I'm really looking into the education system in and of itself, and how, and then reading all of these articles and reading all this, and it's the same, like, I've been a teacher for 20 years and it's the same conversation. It's the same articles. It's the same solutions, but they give a solution, but there's no action taken on the solution. We just keep on going around in a circle. And especially for me, you know, when you look in schools where there is a lot of bullying, where you have a lot of at-risk youth, where you have teachers that, God love them, they mean well, most of them. However, they themselves are a product of one-track thinking and one way of doing things. And our system has not yet been set up for, you know, tapping into children's talents. It is all it's all standardized. Now they say differentiated instruction in the classroom here, and this, every child's a different learner, but at the end of the way, we still test them exactly the same way. We still make them do standardized testing. They still do paper and pen. Maybe some teachers are project based in the classroom, but at the end of the day, you find that so many, you can't do any other way than what the system is telling you to do. And literally my goal right now is to try and break that system. And I know that it's I've had many people say that it's never going to happen because it's been this way for a long time. However, I think now is the time to do that because of the situation that we have been put into this past year. And I think also because, what kind of angers me at the moment, and I'm sure you've been following in the United States over the summer and everything, with the Black Lives Matter movement and all of the hatred and all of the anger and stuff like that. But the one thing that, wanting equality and wanting opportunities, and, there's so many things going on. And I'm thinking to myself right now, the conversation of education and the system has barely come up. You could want equality and better schools and all that. Why aren't you fighting for that? Why are you fighting against each other? Because the only way that equality or that change of mindset is going to happen is by changing the education system as we know. And I haven't seen that conversation be at the forefront of anything right now. It's, for me, that it's shocking, because with all the people in these movements, and if they can get so many to move this way, why aren't we trying to, fix the dilapidated schools, get teachers, the training in a different way, in a different mind. Now that's going to take years. I understand that. However, the only one that I've seen that has done anything remotely close to getting kids to be successful and having a whole systemic change is Harlem Children's Zone in Jeffrey, Canada. And yeah, and so it's one of those things that I don't know, from your opinion. I mean, I know you're in England, is that correct? So what is do they have, I'm imagining that there's the same situation as there, but I don't think, and maybe I'm wrong, that the heightened racism is the same as it is in the United States. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm trying to give you an answer that will benefit. Now, to be honest, I do not watch TV purposely. I've not watched TV I don't know, since 2006. Properly. I do not buy newspapers. I do not watch the news. It's part of the training we've gone through as a family. There's certain things that we tap out of. I guess in order for any of us to somewhat carve out the reality we desire, we have to really take control. We need to take control of what we understand and what we don't understand. So I often hear people talking about school, for instance. Now, when I ask parents this question, they go, oh, okay, I never thought of it like that. So what is the purpose of school? You see, many people have this idea, and again, don't get me wrong, because I know that I've set up a school and many people have. So many people set up the schools with the sole intention to educate. That's what they feel. They feel education is school. But remembering text in a book is not education. No. Right? Okay. We go to school and we teach our kids are taught maths, English, science, but they're taught that these are subjects. They're not taught that these are principles and they are the subjects. Mm-hmm. And that these are just disciplines that they have to basically embody to enable them to become a well-rounded human being, not the other way around. We're taught that you learn maths, but they don't understand that maths is a language and it interconnects in every aspect of their life. Mm-hmm. We're not taught that PE is about us knowing about our body, knowing how to feed our body, look after our body. Our body is the vehicle. So because we have such a disillusion about what school is, we sort of approach it the wrong way. The next aspect is, what is it that they're teaching kids and how wrong it is? Now, the truth is, we wouldn't go to, I don't know, a restaurant and complain why the hairdresser's not there. We wouldn't go to, a hairdresser's and expect a gourmet meal. So when we understand that state schools were put in place for the sole purpose to teach basic maths, English, in order for these kids to operate machinery, because obviously it was a transfer from the farming industry into industrial revolution. So they had a lot of people that couldn't read, couldn't write, but they needed them to operate machinery. So they had to teach them the basics. So if we can just accept, like, what is school really, unless you're paying for it, what is a state school doing? Are they really failing? What was the primary purpose? Because sometimes we are screaming at something that's actually doing what they need to do. We're then going to government. What does the word government mean? It's to govern. So it's like we're having these really bizarre conversations with the wrong entity. Does that make sense? And if I'm going to govern you, you imagine that's not a pleasant relationship to be in. Because if my sole purpose in a friendship is to govern you, and then you're like, well, you don't let me do anything, you don't call me. Well, that's not really my role, So we've got to look at, what do we understand? Often we don't really understand what we're arguing with. Now, you mentioned with the Black Lives Matters. Now, I totally understand what's going on, and I respect the movement, but I think it's being misconstrued by different entities. Mm-hmm. And I think when we don't understand, we can always be taken for a ride. Mm-hmm. It's like often people are doing things and they don't understand. The first initiation has the most beautiful intention, but then things start firing off, and there are many different things going on and different perspectives, so that it's quite hard to get into it, because everything in life is contextual, and what we tend to do is cluster everything together. Now, I think for anyone, if they're able to understand that, if they divide their lives into a contextual exploration, it changes everything. In what context do you connect with your partner? What context do you connect in your relationships? In what context do you connect with your children? And context is everything. Context is the difference between saying that someone murdered someone and someone was in a position for self-defense. So I think sometimes when we're having discussions, it's in what context. Mm-hmm. So even I love autonomy. I like the study of language, and as a family we delve into various things, and one of the things I found quite interesting, the word ist in the English language implies specialist. So when you're learning to play a violin, you're just learning, and when you get to a certain stance, you become a violinist. But it's not until you become a specialist. So we use interesting languages to describe interesting things, and we're all using these languages or these words just because we've heard someone else say it, but actually it's not always the right definition. So if I'm a specialist in my race, it doesn't mean I don't like you.
Right.
But we're talking about ignorance. We're not talking about the ist. Make sense?
Yes.
So it's quite interesting. So a lot of the time I hear conversations and I watch, because I know people coming from a place of passion and pain, and there are things that have taken place that are unfathomable, like stuff that's happened in history. I think it's absolutely disgraceful. And when I hear people say that we should just move on and forget about it, it makes me sick, because some of the atrocities that's happened shouldn't happen to anybody. So it depends what we're talking about and in what context and where we're going with it. But I think with anything in life, we never get there by screaming and shouting.
Right.
Okay. I can have the best intentions.
And I definitely agree with you. There's definitely moving past and forgetting about it is definitely, because those are teachable moments in a way that you could say, this is something that happened. This is where your grandparents or great grandma or whatever, This is where they came from, but do it in a way that instead of pointing a finger at hating others right now, I think that, you can teach as to why did this happen.
I guess again, I love what you're saying, but again, it's contextual. I just want to add this in because it could be sort of understood. So it's like being punched in the face and someone saying, you've got to smile and say, oh, may you not do that again. So it's like, it's in what context are we actually saying? It's like, what do you desire to happen, as opposed to, it's not normal for you to be angry. Well, actually it is. I've just been punched in the face. So it's sometimes what we're saying is quite psychotic. Can you understand what I'm saying? When we add context, it's like people were lynched, cut in half, babies were burnt, and women were like, contraptions were put into their bodies to just split them apart just because they said that they were so strong. So they were fascinated. So your ancestors were treated like animals, and people say, get past it. And I'm not saying we cannot move forward, but it's in what context. And this is the key aspect. You see, when we transform the context, it changes everything. Because when we're not, again, because with human beings, when we're not emotionally connected to something, we don't understand what it feels like. And this is why empathy should be taught at schools, private schools, right? Because a state schools might not go as far as that, but a private school can, because you get what you pay for, right? So when I empathize that someone's baby was taken from their home yesterday just because of the color of their skin, was burnt, or their son was found hanging a tree, it's psychotic for me to go, just get past it. It was before. So we're dealing with lots of different things at lots of different layers, and subconsciously there's a psychotics going on in our culture, because that's insane for someone to go like kind of get past it. When I heard about the history, because obviously I'm born in 1980, so I'm having to learn about these things. And to be honest, I can't believe these things actually happened. I'm like, that's madness. Humans are just so bizarrely wicked sometimes, and it's not just to any one kind. There's so many things throughout history that's happened that shouldn't happen. But I get what I'm trying to emphasize is that, how do we address these things? What needs to be put in place? Because it's going to take centuries to actually heal from different things that's happened in different cultures. But we cannot say, get over it, move forward. And I think that's the issue. So we're having people experiencing the pain, we're having people look at it and go, well, it's in the past. And we're going, wow. If you just look at it and disconnect, like if you do NLP training, it's beautiful that you have the client, the coach, and then you have the observer. So if we're able to disconnect and be the observer and go, whoa, that's insane, like that's not okay in any form. So the context, again, really transforms the dynamics of our understanding. And then we can start looking at ourselves and observing, what if that was me? How would I feel? And unless we're asking that question, and it's not just the anger, it's not us going, okay, well, people can't be angry or can be angry. It's just being okay going, wow, I get why they're angry. But actually, do I even have a right to judge whether they should be angry or not?
Right. No. And you're absolutely correct. And I guess the thing is that, what do you do with that anger? You have an open conversation about it, or do you go and does your anger turn into violence?
Exactly. So there's definitely key things that need to be put in place. I'm like, brilliant that you work in education for 20 years, right? So imagine there's like a fire in school, and this kid sees all of his classmates get burnt in class. There would need to be counseling. There would need to be measures put in place, because if that child's just left to deal with it by himself, and that's what's really going on. And this is why it's so important that we understand the context, because it's like, oh, there's things missing. What's actually been done? What needs to be done? And until we go, wow, it's okay that you're angry. It's okay that you might be scared. It's okay that all these things are happening. But where do we go from here? And that's with anything and anyone in life, because it's the absolute natural thing to do. But we wouldn't, as adults, look at that child and say, well, they're just angry, and like, what do you want to do with the anger? Maybe they just need someone to hold their hand. Maybe we just need to be there for them. And I think that's the context that's missing.
Right. Yes. I agree. And I think that a lot of what children face today, a lot of what adults face today is based on what they feel is the societal norm, or what should be or what shouldn't be, because that's what they've been told all their life. It's kind of
Definitely.
like, hating a person because they're racist, or hating a person because their religion or whatever it might be. Nobody really, people just look and say, okay, well, that's just a horrible person. But why are they that way? What were they taught to be that way? And I always use the example from Huckleberry Finn, Mark Twain, and how this young boy, when Huck was met the boy, and he's like, oh, we don't, the two feuding families, and we don't like them, and they're literally killing each other back and forth. You kill my child, I kill your cousin, and Huck was like, well, why are you angry at them anyways? Oh, well, I don't know, something happened a long time ago. My dad said something happened with my granddad, and my granddad said something happened with my great granddad, and so, but I don't really know exactly what happened. But that has been instilled in him, that he's supposed to hate those people because that's what he was told to do. And until we change that and figure out why these people are acting the way they are. And I love it, because when I interviewed Herb Lang, he says, well, maybe it's time to say, well, maybe what your dad said or what your granddad said, maybe it wasn't right. And maybe you need to start to change that conversation and maybe think differently. That doesn't mean that you don't love your parents or your grandparents, just means that you need to start thinking in a different manner, because maybe they weren't always right in what they taught you or instilled.
Absolutely. And again, context, everything, it's I think context changes everything. It depends in what context there's many layers. The context is one thing, but there's many layers, and it's always like, what's going on? But we, as individuals, we have to keep questioning ourselves. I really believe that the quality of one's life is determined by the quality of questions that we ask ourselves upon a daily basis. So, like, really, is this in alignment with me? Is this the best version of me? Like, what do I desire to carve out of this life, this experience that we get to call life? So I think we have to understand the average person doesn't always go through personal development. And these are the missing keys. Like, it's all very well saying to someone, like, jump in the sea or learn this and do that. But the average person, what I realized, we're in the personal development world. We're very immersed. We've been there for many years. But if the average person has never known how to address feeling inadequate, never known how to go, well, there's no such thing as failure. It's just feedback. Keep going. So there are character traits that we have to deal with. And I'm not going against what you're saying. I'm actually agreeing. I'm just saying that there's many layers, and often it's like, well, hey, I can drive a car, why don't you? But this person's been driving for 15 years, and this person's like out of their mind. There's so much control, like they don't understand it. So we have to understand that unless there's a blanket starting point for people to do personal development, we're always going to be bumping heads. Because I can be subject to certain things, and I won't react in a specific way that's kind of a stereotypical way, just purely because I've had personal development. I just look at things differently. I'll take a step back instead of taking a step forward. I might just listen. No response is sometimes louder than a response. So it's all of these tools that people don't actually have in their toolkit. Mm-hmm. And the same goes for children, the same goes for adults. So we're dealing with all these emotions throughout the day, and they're firing off, like mental health issues are just like off the Richter scale right now. And again, like people just being able to express themselves, knowing when they need to talk, knowing that it's not healthy to just stay within four walls, go out, venture. People not knowing how to make friends. Like one of the things that really startled me, one of my friend that I know, there's an acquaintance that I have, and he's published a book called #Loneliness. And loneliness is the biggest issue in the world. Yet we have 7 billion plus in the world. So I'm just like, that doesn't make any sense. How can we be lonely in such an abundant world? So it then means there's so much going on. And you ask again, context, what are the layers? See, when we have war within, we have war without. And unless we go through these journeys of healing, go through these journeys of personal development, it's kind of unfair for anyone in any situation to go, well, hey, that doesn't make any sense. They don't know what to do with it.
Right.
You've got men like just erupting, like yelling, and domestic violence is going like absolutely insane around the world. But these men are projecting, they're not around other men. And there's just us as human beings, we've got a long way to go to just get the basics. Like, we want to change the world and we want to, we want to be successful. But what is success?
Right.
Half of us don't have health. We don't have happiness, but we're chasing for the stars and for the universe. So just got to check in sometime.
And that's a really key point, like that so many do not know how to define properly success. And that is really one of my key things that I'm putting in my book, like, is, what is success? And success being, for me, I define it as anything that you feel makes you happy and joyful inside to do, and makes you wake up every day feeling that joy within. That means that you're successful. Whether you are a stay-at-home mom, whether you are a doctor, whether you're a teacher, whatever it is that you have a passion about, that you have even an obsession about, doesn't matter. And I think, unfortunately, right now, especially for young people, they are viewing success as a superstar, as the amount of things that you have. And that's really what the foundation of the book is, that I'm trying to do, and incorporate all these success stories of people who came from horrible childhoods. Like, I have a man who was an orphan and then kidnapped in El Salvador, and another one, and now he ended up becoming a presidential chef. And then, another one who was born in India, and he came to the United States with $5 in his pocket. And another one who was brutally raped as a young girl at 9 years old, but now owns her own medical clinic and has started a whole nonviolence movement in the United States. So all of these different stories showing that, but not famous, overly famous people, not people that have been like, wow, I'm just, now I have this car. That, if you want that, that's great. If you want to be an actress, so taking these people, of a woman from the foster care system in all different nationalities, because it has to be broad, to show when, when someone's in school and teaching something, say, I can't do that. Oh yeah, well, let's look at this person. Let's take this story. Do you want to see how you can do that too? And so I feel that success is very misconstrued. And I think that if we really want to make a huge change, yes, adults need personal development right now, but I think if we really want to create a changed future, we need to be teaching these success principles in school before they have to make those important choices, before they go to college for 4 years and decide that I didn't even want to do this, but I did it because this is what my mom wanted, or my dad wanted, or society told me that I wanted. And therefore, and I think that, and then that's really where I'm trying to go with all of this, because unless like you said, the context is changed, unless these kids are being taught this, our society is reactive. It's not proactive, and it needs to be proactive. And I just think the time is now.
I love the sound of your book. Let me know when that's out. It sounds amazing.
Yes. I am literally in the process of doing it. It's called Follows and Likes. Is this all that I'm worth?
Ooh, wow, that's powerful. There's going to be a lot of issues with mental health if that continues. Because again, this is all superficial. I always say to people, I love what you're saying, because what about fulfillment? because if we don't have a sense of fulfillment attached to success, because it can always be that shiny object syndrome. And, you know, they say that money cannot buy happiness. I don't really agree with that, because money definitely gives you choices. And again, it's all contextual. You know, sometimes we cluster, because if you've got a relative that needs a life-saving opportunity, a life-saving operation, and you don't have the money, please don't say that money wouldn't buy you happiness in that respect.
Right.
Money gives people choices, but I think I totally agree with what you're saying. It's really like the likes and all of the external isn't anything if the internal isn't right. You know, I really love that saying, as above, so below, as within, so without. So we need to go inwards. I think the entire world has been somewhat made to make us go on this journey of external validation, external conquest, external attainment. Like, am I good enough now? And you go out and you run and get something else. Am I good enough now? And then you get another one. Am I good enough now? And all we're just searching for, it's right here. It's right here. And we can spend a whole lifetime running away, running around, running away, running around, looking for that very thing, and just connect with ourselves. That is the most, in my view, I feel that that's the most precious gift that we all need to be given the opportunity to do. Because when we're little, we do that. And this is really where my parenting comes in. I want to preserve that sacred essence for as long as possible, because we do that naturally. It's just, unfortunately, depending on when we grow up and the environments we're immersed into, it's knocked out of us. It really is knocked out of us. Look at these amazing stories. But I love that your book is going to show it doesn't matter where you start. You can still end up where you desire. And I really love that. And I think in addition to that is really asking ourselves those quality questions, not just what success is, what brings me fulfillment, what brings me joy. And I can't say that without mentioning, so that we've got an amazing family mentor called Regan Hillier. We met her in 2017, and she has this slogan, you absolutely can have it all. And I love that. I love it, because we live in an abundant universe, but yet sometimes we shrink things down. We go for such insignificant outputs when we can have so much more. And I really have a lot of faith that when people read your book, it will spark that joy in people to really start searching and asking themselves those more probing questions when they see those stories. And I think that's just absolutely remarkable.
Right. And I think that, and as you said, it's that inner question. It's not looking at the outside. And I often, when I'm making an important choice for myself or important decision, I say to myself, if nobody else existed, what would I do? And that is one way, tried and true all the time, that I can figure out truly what I want to do. You know, if I didn't have this, that, or that, if nothing else mattered, if money didn't matter, if this didn't matter, if that didn't matter, what would I do? And that has always given me the ability to make the right choice. So yeah, and I think that it's really important, and I think it's really, like you said, key, because there is no one definition for success.
Exactly.
Success doesn't have one image. Success has multiple images, and therefore, whatever it is that you feel is what brings you joy and makes you happy, and I think that that's where it's stifled in the education system, is that you're being told that you can't raise higher, that you go above and beyond, because people are saying, you know, well, that doesn't usually happen. Or, right, maybe it doesn't usually happen. That doesn't mean I can't be one of those exceptions, right?
Exactly.
Look at, and I love one of my favorite stories is Jonte Hall. He was a former Harlem Globetrotter, and he's 5 feet 2 inches tall, right? And he always wanted to be a professional basketball player, and he ended up having to leave basketball and take care of his mom, or leave the college and take care of his mom. So he had to stop playing, and he was, you know, a janitor cleaning toilets. And then at 26 years old, he said to his mom, you know, I still want to play basketball. And he said to his mom was like, you know, go, you do this. And he went and he tried out and he did everything he could. And finally that that door opened. And
Oh, wow.
it's things like that. And it's not a 1 in a million. But the one thing that we can tell that I have seen with all of these people, the one thing that keeps them moving and keeps them going and gets them to that point of success is perseverance.
Mm.
Believing in themselves and not stop, always trying to get to that next step. And it's not easy. It's not easy because, but anybody who has attained the success that they wanted for themselves in life has always come because they believed they could, and they just kept pushing on and understood that failure is not meant to hold you back and say that you can't. Failure is meant for you to say, okay, it doesn't work that way, so I'm going to try this way or that way or another way. It becomes a learning experience. Okay, it didn't work like that, so it worked like this. And those are,
life is beautiful. I think we just need to let go and have more fun with it. I think sometimes we could just be so rigid, so like, I think again, I love context, because when do we know when enough's enough? Like, when do we know that that alignment's not for us unless we're going inwards? You see, sometimes like it's it's so funny. Like, there's this story, the mentee went to the mentor and says, what do I do in life? And the mentor says, say yes. So he goes out into the street and someone offers him something and he doesn't want it. And he says yes. And, someone else says, can I come home to your house? He says yes. And he goes like, I don't really like saying yes. He goes back to the mentor and he says to the mentor, what should I do? Well, if you want to say no, say no. As he goes out and someone offers him something and he says no, but he really wants it. And then someone says, I want to be friends. And he goes, no. And he goes back to the mentor and says, like, you told me to say yes, you told me to say no. And I'm saying yes or no, it's not working out. It's contextual. Like, we have to just learn to just be light about it, know when to push, but also know when it's your hibernation. And this goes back to the same essence. How do I connect with me? So we put yes into the toolbox, we put no into the toolbox, and the more I learn how to operate this beautiful body that we get to call me, we know which one to pull out when, and sometimes we're going to get it wrong. And again, when we say get it wrong, in what context? It's just sometimes I'm going to say no when I want to say yes. Sometimes I'm going to say yes when I want to say no. And it's just about fine-tuning that back and forth and having fun learning, going, wow, like yesterday I didn't know how to do this and I did today, and actually I don't really feel like pushing against this door anymore. And I think that if we get into that stance, life starts to reveal to us so much more than we understand. And I feel that, like, I can honestly put both hands up and say, wow, my kids have opened up my awareness to a whole new understanding of life, just because I didn't feel I had to say the yes and no all the time. Is that, what if we just throw it all away? Who said we have to attain success? I say to people say, what's your next thing? And I'm saying, I'm just playing in life. Mm-hmm. Life is my playground.
Right.
Yeah. Life is my canvas and I'm the artist. And if we can just allow ourselves to just surrender to the process, chances have it that we will become and achieve and just be so much more than we can ever understand. And I really invite anybody that I meet to really go on that journey and say, actually, what have you already attained your dream? And, Regan has this thing, you have a vision and a vision, because a lot of people do one vision board, but she has this amazing process where she does one vision board and she says, what vision board would you create after that one? And I'm like, that's insane. Like, sometimes we're just chasing one, but I love that, like the vision after the vision after the vision. Just be playful with it. Just expand, because chances are, if we really ask ourselves, we're playing so small. We don't really realize how powerful we are. Mm-hmm. We don't realize what we can attain. And those beautiful stories in your book are really a glimpse of what's possible outside what you might initially believe.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. And I agree with that idea with the vision board as well. I mean, I do that with mine, and I like to call it, and I learned this back in years ago, it's backward design. And, you start with this, and then you have, okay, what am I going to, what do I need to get there? And you have the shorter term, and then a little bit longer, a little bit longer. And then, okay, then that is going to get me here.
That's
So
beautiful.
that's so important. It's so powerful. And so many people need to think that way, because you think, I'm going to do this. And then 5 years come, but you didn't say, okay, how am I going to get there? What am I going to do to get there? And the important question is, why do I want to get there? What's my main goal? What's my mission in getting to that point? Is it because I want to, or is it because I'm trying to fulfill what somebody wants of me? And
Definitely. And we're so different. You know what I love about what you're saying is that this is why it's so important for children and adults to have a buffet in life, because we are so different. Like, some people are motivated like lastminute.com. Like, when I was at uni, I was lastminute.com. I'm like, wow, get it done. And some people love to prepare. And I guess it's finding out we call it strengths and weaknesses, and I guess I'll just use that label, but it's just fine-tuning who we are, getting to know. Again, it's all about us getting to know ourselves, because in that journey of just saying, well, do you need structure? Because some people do. Some people without structure will not get anywhere. Some people, too much structure puts out their light. And then the world sort of goes, well, I need to become this. You're trying to do all this, but actually you're just turning out your light. And I'm 40 now, and I can say that 2013 is when my last son was born. I've already achieved such a massive dream that I think is just profound. Childhood dream is to be a mother. And I had 5 healthy kids, and I get to live a wonderful life. So sometimes we've created our biggest dreams already, and everything else is a bonus. But because we're so much in the chase, we don't get to see it. It's like, hey, I've got to do this. I've got to do this. And people say, what are you doing next? And you're like, wow, da-da. Like, just chill out.
right.
I always say to people, there's no haste. I'm just enjoying life. I'm living my dream. I've got my family, and I'm healthy. And anything else that we create is a bonus. So sometimes it's lots of different things, lots of different layers. And I think your book is going to be so inspirational once people get to read it.
Hope you've enjoyed tonight's episode of What's Up Punta Cana with Christy Maggio. Anybody who knows me knows that I have been an educator for over 20 years. And many know that I came to the Dominican Republic over 7 years ago. And in 2016, I started my own school. While I do have my radio show, I use this show as a vehicle to further people's awareness about a great many different things and strengthen my reputation to be able to bring awareness to my vision. It originally started with discovering and developing different curiosities that I had about the country of the Dominican Republic, and evolved it into something greater that has to do with my mission and my focus in life, and that is education. My obsession is equal education for everyone. Being in the system for many years, I see a lot of people who work and care about changing or adapting the system, but the same problems exist on the same scale that I experienced when I entered the field 20 years ago. And in my opinion, the issue is that the system is reactive instead of being proactive. And therefore, I've started to use this show when COVID hit to look at the idea of success. And it all started with Sheena Kantar, who contacted me on LinkedIn and told me about the movie How Thoughts Become Things. It had just come out. And I said, wow, let me interview these people and see their idea of success right now. And as I continue to look into the world of personal development, I began to discover that people right now are looking for the help they need because as adults, they have come to a point in their life where they're wondering, how did I get here? And why am I not doing something? Or why am I not happy with who I am or what I'm doing? And how did I let so many years go by? And I started reading different books. I was introduced to 2 books called The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace D. Wattles and Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And those two books in and of themselves changed the way I thought about so many things. And let me explain, because it's not necessarily about getting rich, but it has a lot to do with abundance and how the world is overly abundant. Yet people look at the world as things that are limited. You see much competition and so many people trying to win their way over one another without realizing that there really is enough for everybody. And then the other thing were the key characteristics of successful people. And I wondered to myself, why aren't we teaching this to young people in school? Why is this not mandatory to teach in school? Don't get me wrong, we have people who come to schools who talk about success, who say, hey, you can do it, you can strive, you can achieve, you can accomplish your dreams, your goals, because you just need to believe in yourself. And that's all great. Those are great to get you motivated, get children motivated, get them started. But the problem is, even with adults, what's that first step that you need to take? Everyone says what, but nobody really tells people how to do it. And even going one step further, in order for young people or adults to really be able to get to that how, is to find clarity in what brings them joy and why they want to do something when they choose to do it. Because without knowing, you really need to be able to explain to somebody why you're doing what you're doing. It needs to be something that's clear, in something that you love and have a passion for, or as Naveen Jain said, have an obsession about. Something that wakes you up in the morning and makes you say, I can't wait to get to work today. Because if you don't know why you're doing what you're doing, then there's a problem. 80% of our life is spent probably doing a job, and I'll go back to the interview that I had with Greg Reed a couple of weeks ago, which was what he said about giving his son an allowance. And the woman he was speaking with told him, well, you're teaching him that the only way to earn money is by doing jobs and things around the house that he doesn't like to do. And for him, that was like an aha moment. And for me as well. And for us, I think also we go to school, and don't get me wrong, we all go to our work as a teacher with a desire to say, hey, I want to make a difference. But then I think years go by and you get burnt out, and things change and rules change, regulations change, and you feel like you're up against a wall. And I think that a lot of times right now we hear a lot of discussion about kids going back to school because of COVID, and I agree with that. They need to be in school, but I also agree that teachers wanting vaccines should come first. I understand that, but what I don't understand is why the real conversation right now, the real conversation that needs to be happening, is why it's not about the inequality in our system that has continued for years and years and years, and that continues to happen with overcrowded classrooms, teaching to the standards and standardized testing, and putting children in a box and not letting them express themselves for who they are, and just still doing everything the way that it was done years ago. And I think that the question that we need to ask, and what I'm going to end with today, is why do we have schools? Why do schools exist? What is the purpose of them? And it's one of the things that Sabrina had brought up and brought to my mind. Why did they originally exist? Because they haven't really changed a whole lot. Why are we still taking paper and pencil tests as our only way of assessing whether or not our children have grown, when we force, as I said before, differentiated instruction, and we don't use applied assessments? What do we want for these children, and why do we not provide them with the proper tools to make those choices and decisions for their life prior to them graduating high school? So they're not coming to a point where they're 30, 40, 50 years old and saying, I need a personal development coach. Why didn't I figure this out a long time ago? So I leave you with that. I have much more to come on this topic, but my goal is to update the educational policy that currently exists in the United States, and that is truly my mission at this moment, and I really will be working on this. Naysayers or not, I believe it can change. It just won't happen overnight. But the conversations and the articles and everything that you read about education and what needs to be done are great. But enough talk. It's time to take action. It's time to act and actually do what we say and know can be the solution. And Jeffrey Canada in Harlem Children's Zone has it right for so many years. And really, there's a lot of people out there that have really tried and put forth the effort, but it's not enough, obviously. It needs to come from the top down, and this needs to be the national conversation in the United States right now. It needs to be changed completely across the board. But it's difficult, and in the short term, it costs a lot more money. However, in the long term, we keep kids in school. We give them the opportunities they don't usually have, and they end up becoming contributing members to society instead of on welfare or in jail. Think about it. I'm going to leave you all, and I really hope you have a wonderful, wonderful week. And we'll be back next week for What's Up Punta Cana with Christy Maggio. Have a good night.